Hi, Gilbert.
Hi, Mr. Bob.
Hello.
Shalom.
Shalom, shalom. Welcome once again to our midweek MIDrash, one and all. Thank you so much for tuning us in, whether you're doing this live at 7:30 p.m. on this Wednesday evening. What is it? December 22nd.
Yes.
Wow. The year is almost over according to the Gregorian calendar. The true biblical calendar's got a few months yet to go, but we're entering into the solstice of the winter. So buckle up, put an extra scarf on, wear your nice mittens, whatever you got to do. It's tough to turn pages with mittens, though, so just be forewarned.
Yes.
So we welcome you once again as we are endeavoring to do our study of the Psalm 139, and within the next few weeks we will be concluding this, and we're gaining some momentum. We're as I set up each week, I'll do it once again. That Psalm 139 has 4 poetic paragraphs, each containing 6 verses, and it concludes with a couplet that elaborates on each of the unit's central theme. 1 through 6 discusses the fact that he is omniscient, he's all-knowing. 7 to 12 is that he is omnipresent, he's everywhere. 13 to 18 talks more about the intimate relationship he has with humanity that he's created, with very detailed account of that. And then concluding 19 to 24, in which David, the Psalter, is pledging his allegiance to Yah, having come to the conclusion that he is, that he is Kadosh, he's holy, he's unique, he's set apart. There's none like him. He's everywhere. He knows all. He was involved in my being, and what is my response but to praise him and to serve him? And so we will be, we're involved in that last portion. We've already read 19 up to 21. So our friend Herman, once we get started, is going to do the reading from 19 to 22. And then we're going to go back into the Hebrew, make comments on the structure and all these other nice little details, which are lots of fun. And we're hoping that you're enjoying this and rooting us on. Rooting us on. Rah, rah. Go, go. So shalom, shalom. And Herman, welcome once again.
Thank you.
To our tag team effort here. And shalom to William over there.
Yes, William. Hello and welcome, William. Hey.
William is a rock, man. Very absolutely rock. Gilbert, if you would do us the honor of opening in prayer for us.
Yes, sir. Oh, Yahweh, look down upon us, Elohim, from your heavenly throne this night with your celestial brightness, that by night and by day your people may glorify your name. And let your blessings be upon all of us through your Son Yeshua, our King and Savior. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Gil. Toda rabah. And okay, so why don't we get into the text? We had a little issues last week. Don't remind me, please.
We're good. We're good this week. We're good.
We are tov. We are tov ma'od. We're very good.
Yes, indeed.
We don't want to exhibit pride, otherwise, Yah will pull the plug on us. So we can't.
No, it's going to be good.
It's too ahead of ourselves. But so far, so good, or so far, so good.
So far, so good.
That's right. So, Herman, my hermano, if you would be so kind as to read 19 to 22.
Okay.
And I believe you have the New King James Version there.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So verses 19 to 22. Here we go. Oh, that you would slay the wicked, O God. Depart from me, therefore, you bloodthirsty men. For they speak against you wickedly. Your enemies take your name in vain. Do I not hate them, O Lord, who hate you? And do I not loathe those who rise up against you? I hate them with perfect hatred. I count them my enemies.
Amen. Amen.
Very strong words there.
Very strong words, yes.
Yeah. Fight, and in fact, them are fighting words.
Them's be fighting words.
Yes.
And first hearing upon it, we say, well, that doesn't sound like the Christian approach to things. We're to love our enemies. We're to pray for those who persecute us. But what David is doing here is very specific, very focused. And I mentioned this last week, where the word to hate, zane is to treat, to consider those who reject Yah as our foe, our enemy. And I mentioned also that that this is a declaration of loyalty that echoes the pledge that was required by ancient Near Eastern kings of their vassals. And the vassal king is somebody who was an independent ruler who was accountable only to his overruler, his overseer, who was the main king. Okay, and such a quote from one of the such things. It says, "With my friend you shall be my friend, and with my enemy you shall be my enemy." And that's literally from a treaty between Morsilis II, who was a Hittite king, with Tet of Nuhasi in the 14th century BC. So just as we see in the book of Ruth, right? We see in the book of Ruth that Ruth does not want to go on being an independent. She's cleaved unto her mother-in-law and seeks to be a source of life and joy to her. And your people are my people, your Elohim is my Elohim, and so on and so forth. And nothing but death will separate us. And that's the same type of thing. So in other words, I'm on your side. So in other words, these people who are upsetting to you are upsetting to me. Those who hate you are hating us also.
Right.
And the response is equally given that is presented. So that's just a little intro to this. And again, a lot of us are taken off guard by the severity of the tone, and it is very severe, and it should be. We don't take this lightly. So, Herman, if you would do the honors of
Yeah,
night.
Bob,
Big comment.
what I would like to do, since I didn't have an opportunity to share last week, I'd like to share the material that I wanted to share last week, and then I guess you can go on to verse 22, okay?
Yes, sir.
Alrighty. So, as we see in verse 21, where King David says, "Do I not hate them, O Lord, who hate you? And do I not loathe those who rise up against you?" And what the poet is doing here is that he has rhetorical questions that he is presented in his poem so that he can use that as a springboard to present his case. So they're rhetorical questions. All right. And since he has that style, I want to copy that style. I want to do the same thing. And I want to ask some rhetorical questions and build on that. Okay.
Yes,
So the
sir.
first question is, what is hate? And I would answer that as a very strong emotion that is usually combined with disgust. Believe it or not, there is an element of disgust when a person hates really, really strong. So that is what hate is. It's a very strong emotion, often combined with disgust. And when do we hate? Usually we'll hate a person or an ideology that threatens our well-being or our life. When we see that something is really dangerous to us and it's ongoing, we will usually develop a hate and a disgust to it. So that's when we usually hate, when it threatens us. And the other question is, why do we hate? Why do we hate? And I have two answers to that. Of course, there are many more, but I have at least two answers here. And the first answer is because of the negative effects of sin. Unfortunately, sin has permeated this world so much. And so that's one answer, the negative effects of sin. And the second answer is because we're made in Yahweh's image, in his image and in his likeness, and he hates. There are certain things that he hates. And since we're made in his image, we also have that capacity. But the problem is that if hate is not checked, if we don't check it, if we do not control hate, it can become very, very destructive, both to ourselves and to others. So it can be a very powerful, destructive thing. And it's something that we have to really, really be mindful of. Okay? And so, like other things in this world, we can use hate. Believe it or not, we can use hate for good, or we can use it for evil. Now, we often associate um, hate with negative emotions and negativity. And yeah, we all often, but as I said, we can use hate positively. In that, we can use hate as a barrier to evil, hating sin, in order to remove ourselves from sin and not have fellowship with it. And by declaring our hate for those things, for declaring them openly, declaring those things that the Lord hates, we are, in a sense, providing a testimony, as David does. He provides a testimony before heaven and earth. He and we get to define ourselves, right? We give a testimony before heaven and earth, and we show heaven and earth whose side we're on.
Yes.
So that's the positive aspect of hate. We could use it positively. So it is, in a sense, it is correct to hate things that the Lord hates. So now the question is, what does he hate? Right? It's an important question because if it's okay to hate what he hates, then we have to ask ourselves, what does he hate? And of course, the Bible is replete with a lot of things that the Lord hates. But I want to read two passages that underscore this thing about hate. The first passage is found in Proverbs chapter 6. Proverbs chapter 6, verses 16 through 19. And I want to read it slow and I want to count them off because here we have 7 things that the Lord hates. So I want to read them slow and count them off. Here we go. Proverbs 6, 16 through 19. These 6 things the Lord hates. Yes, 7 are an abomination to him. Here comes number 1. A proud look. That's number 1. Here comes number 2. A lying tongue. Number 3, hands that shed innocent blood. And what I find interesting about the first 3 is that one is our disposition, a proud look. The second one, a lying tongue, what we say. And the third one, hands to shed innocent blood, what we do. So our disposition, our words, and our actions. Number 4, these are the things that he hates. Number 4, a heart that devises wicked plans. And remember that David speaks against the wicked. Number 5, feet that are swift in running to evil. Let me repeat that. Number 5, feet that are swift in running to evil. And what I get from that is that certain people are eager. They're eager to do evil, and that's one of the abominations. That's one of the things that the Lord hates. Number 6, a false witness who speaks lies, and number 7, one who sows discord among brethren. All right. These are just some of the things that the Lord hates, and it is correct that we hate them as well. And this is why I say that we can use hate in a positive way. So, folks, if there are any of you out there that are practicing these things, please, I want to strongly urge you, stop it. Stop practicing these things, okay? Please. Now, one more passage for good measure. Um, Another thing that the Lord hates is religious hypocrisy. And this is a biggie. Well, they're all big, but I consider this one a biggie. And I want to read from Amos chapter 5, verses 21 through 24. Amos 5, 21 through 24. Religious hypocrisy. Here we go. The Lord said, and these are very strong words. The Lord says, I despise your feast days, and I do not savor your sacred assemblies. Though you offer me burnt offerings and your grain offerings, I will not accept them, nor will I regard your fatted peace offerings. The peace offering was a special offering that communicated fellowship, right? But he says, forget about it. Don't even bother with your peace offerings. And verse 23 continues and says, take away from me the noise of your songs, for I will not hear the melody of your string instruments. But this is what the Lord wants, folks. But let justice run down like water, and righteousness like a mighty stream. Alrighty. So if we hate the things that the Lord hates, I think we'll be on good ground. We're on good ground. Bob, would you like to share anything there before I move on to the PowerPoint?
Yeah, actually, a couple of interesting things that I noticed. Number one is one of the words for sin is hate or cheta. So we, as the Talmudim, the students of Yah, we are to hate the sin and love the sinner, as the saying goes, right?
Right, right.
So, and if we can mute the phone, please. And the other thing with regards to that, there are good things regarding hate. The word also says, "In your anger, don't sin." Are we okay to be angry? Sometimes it's okay to be angry.
Yes.
Again, there are those who are saying, "Don't anger is sin. Righteous indignation is okay." And again, those are people who are fluent in Christianese and treat it as a completely different language. And just as Yah says, "Is Jacob I loved, Esau I have hated." Okay, now what does that mean? Do I hate Esau? Do I hate those of his offspring? Well, he blessed that whole genealogy, and they had princes and kings before Jacob did. So he did bless them, and he gave them plenty of opportunities to turn around and what have you. But what that means is Jacob qualifies and Esau is disqualified. Just like Messiah says, "Well done, my faithful servant, and depart from me, I never knew you." Shalom to Hadassah, by the way. I'm sorry I didn't recognize you at the first point. Thank you. I also neglected to change the episode. This is actually episode 60, not 59. So I'm going to have to change that in post production, as it were. Makes me sound very official. But anyway, so hate. Hate is one of the words for sin. And missing the mark or just being profane and doing things in a high-handed way, which is an abomination. So Yah hates hate. And just as death will one day die, so will hate, because there will be nothing to hate, or in the sense there'll be perfect shalom throughout the universe, and we won't even fondly remember it, because hate is what has begun many wars and many horrible situations. So, but there's a time when we're pledging our allegiance to Yah, it says, "Abba, the things that upset you upset me." Okay. There's a lot of us who make excuses, but when we read the first chapter of Romans, it says not only those who do these things are worthy of judgment, but those who give their approval of them also.
Very good, Bob. Bob, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that's one of the passages that also came to my mind, and I have in my notes regarding this. How interesting that you bring it up. And I hope to read that. I hope to read that whether this week or maybe next week, regarding the concept of those that hate the Lord. Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing as how do we show that we love Yah? It says in Yochanan Aleph, chapter 5, to love Yah is to keep his commandments. So to hate Elohim is to reject his commandments. That's why it says in the 10 Commandments, those who love me and keep my commandments, opposed to those who hate me and flee from before me, those who hate me, as opposed to those who love me. And they're described by the characteristics that accompany these things, these traits, these giveaways. Just like Messiah says that the world will know who you are because of your love for each other. That ahava, we are loving in actions each other, to be indifferent. I often say the opposite of love is not so much hate sometimes, but it's indifferent. Yah's not indifferent to anybody. He's the shofet. He's the ultimate judge. So he's not indifferent to anybody. There is no gray with Yah. Just like in the book of Judges, the book of Shoftim, he says they did what was right in their own eyes, or they sinned against Yah by doing things that were evil in his eyes. And we think of the most abominable things, but just rejecting things that he says is tov, obedient, faithful, and set apart to do. If we reject them, we're doing evil in his eyes. So our eyes and his eyes need to be on the same page, so to speak. So anyway, I'm going on too much. I want to make sure that you get in your your shekels here.
Yep. Alrighty, so let me set up here, and we're going to get to the PowerPoint, and we're going to do some grammar. So, folks, put on your thinking caps. Okay, let's set up here. Remember that? Oh, man, that goes back a while. Put on your thinking caps. That's what our teachers used to say when I was in grade school. That's amazing. Now that just came out.
Amen.
Oh, let's see.
Okay.
Got a little delay here on the computer.
That's okay.
Yep. Okay, I don't know what's going on here.
Okay, it's all hooked up to the right things.
Yeah. Go ahead, Bob. Fill in a couple of words here. I'll see if I can
Okay.
Well, get this thing going.
I shared some of these last week, but again, it's okay to repeat certain things again with the idea of zeal. Psalm 69:9 says, "Because zeal for your house has eaten me up, has devoured me, and the reproaches of those who reproach you have fallen upon me." The Messiah says, if they hated me, they're going to hate you also. Okay, Yochanan 2:17 says, and Yeshua says, "Take away these things. Do not make my father's house a house of merchandise, a den of thieves." He refers to it also. That his Talmudim remember that it was said, "Zeal for your house has devoured me." So again, making Messiah the focus of that psalm, that his zeal is love ablaze. Those who mock Elohim also mock his servants. Okay.
Sorry, folks. My computer kind of crashed here, and I'm waiting for it to close down. So, Bob, I apologize for that.
That's okay. That's okie dokie.
Yeah.
It's a good point that you made also, that these are rhetorical questions. Do I not reject those who reject you? Do I not feel hostile towards those who are hostile towards you? And we're hostile by our disobedience, by us living the life of being a renegade, of being on the run from the law, just like being under the law. One of the meanings of that is to be a lawbreaker, to be a fugitive from justice, to go to a class that's teaching law is, and say, who is under the law today? And everyone will say, well, I'm law obedient, so I guess that means I'm under the law. No. If you're under the law, according to the terminology of the high law of this country, it means that you're a fugitive, you're a lawbreaker. So we're not under law, we are under his chesed, his chen, his grace, which is not unmerited favor. It's his smiling down upon us for our obedience, not for our disobedience. So anyway, so we had to have Herman shut it down and come back again, and he's got different things plugged in, so we will without doubt have access to these words and be able to get a better understanding on these verses. One more, Psalm 74:18 says, "Remember this, that the enemy has reproached, O Yahuwah, and that a foolish people has blasphemed your name. Oh, do not deliver the life of your turtle dove to the wild beast." Okay, let me get Herman back on here. Okay.
Hi, I'm back.
All right. And do not forget the life of your poor forever. Have respect to the covenant, for the dark places of the earth are full of haunts of cruelty. Oh, do not let the oppressed return ashamed. Let the poor and the needy praise your name. Arise, O Elohim, plead your own cause. Okay, looks like we have some words here.
Yes. Okay,
All right.
Bob. All right. So this is the fourth stanza in which we're in. And as I said before, it is a chiastic structure. And I'm not going to go over this because I've done it over before. But the reason why I'm showing this is because there's another way in which we can see the fourth structure, the fourth stanza. And here it is here. This is another very interesting feature for me anyway, because I like looking for these hints. And look where the rhetorical questions are. They're tucked in the very center. Okay, they are in between, nestled in between requests and statements. And this is what we're working on here, verse 21, where he starts, where he has these rhetorical questions. So I found this pretty neat here, pretty neat, how they're nestled in between requests and statements. All right, moving on. So what I would like to do now is focus on the grammar of verse 21, and I'm going to focus on three things. All right, and here is our verse, and as you can see, I have three things highlighted, which is this letter here. Now, it may look like the ha, like the definite article, but it is not the definite article. This is what you would call an interrogative hey. This is the question mark. So that's one thing that I'm going to focus on, and the different forms that the interrogative hey takes. The second thing that I want to focus on is on the way that lo is spelled. And then the third thing is this bar here called a pasuk. So that's what we're going to dwell on today. And this is a repetition. So here's the interrogative hey. These are the points once again. The variant spelling, because we see in the Tanakh, we see two ways in which lo, which means no or not, is spelled. We see it here with the cholam waw, or the cholam wa, and then we see it without the cholam. The one with the cholam is considered a full spelling, whereas the one without the cholam, without the wa, is considered defective. I find that very interesting. I don't know who came up with that term, but that's what it's called in the literature. All right. And then, of course, the pasuk, which is that vertical bar, which is, we find it in our psalm. In fact, we find it three times, which I can understand why the Masoretes put that bar in, because if we read this phrase together, it would be kind of irreverent, almost blasphemous. So this is what we're going to touch on today, folks, okay? Alrighty, so the interrogative hey, as I said, this is the question mark of the sentence, and it's prefixed to the word, all right? As you see here, it's prefixed to the word. It's usually pointed with the hatef pathak, and the hatef pathak is the two dots that look like a shwa, like a sheva, and the pathak. That's the usual pointing. But it's only pointed this way when it's before a word that it's a non-guttural. And you'll notice that I put non-guttural here, I highlighted it because the lamed is a non-guttural. And because it's a non-guttural, it's pointed with the usual hatif pathak. Now, if the interrogative hey follows a word that has a shwa, a sheva, the two dots, then the interrogative hey is pointed with just the pathak. And the reason for that is because you cannot have two shwas in the beginning of a word, in the beginning of a sentence, All right? So here is a good example from Genesis 27, where we find the narrative of Jacob and Esau. Jacob received the blessing already, and Esau now is going to his father to request the blessing, right? We know the account. And Isaac says, I already gave the blessing. Who are you? So this is the statement here. And Esau said to his father, have you only one blessing, my father? Notice the question mark. And here is the interrogative hey, and it does not have the hatif because the following letter has a shwa. All right, so that's a second way in which the interrogative hey is presented. Bob, I don't know if you would like me to read this, but this is what it said here. And Esau said to his father, in the interest of time, I won't read it unless you want me to, okay?
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, so here it is. It says, Vayomer Esav, or Esau, El Aviv, Haviracha achat hi lecha avi. Okay, so this is the question here. Ha haveracha, have you only one blessing? Achat, only one blessing, right? Hi lecha avi. So that's one example. Okay, let's moving on, and I'm going to do a recap of these three pointings. The interrogative hey is, let's see. Oh yeah, it's also pointed with a patak when the following word has a guttural. And since the aleph is a guttural in Malachi chapter 1, verse 13, here the interrogative hey is pointed with only a pathak. And it is Malachi, and this is the Lord asking, questioning the priests, should I accept this from your hand, says the Lord? So the Hebrew would read, Ha ertze otach miyadchem, Amar Yahweh. Should I accept this from your hand? And there's the interrogative hey with the guttural following, hence the pathak. Now, the interrogative hey, it will be pointed with a segol, the three little dots there. I call them the billiard boards, right? It looks like a little billiard set. Now, it's pointed with the segol if the following letter is a guttural with a comets. And here we have an example. So here is a guttural, the hey is a guttural, it has a comets. So the interrogative hey, the question mark, is pointed with a segol. And this example is from Genesis 24, verse 5. Alrighty, and this is the narrative where Abraham tells his servant, I want you to go and get a wife for my son and bring her back. And of course, the servant says, well, what if she doesn't want to come? Should I take him? And Abraham says, no, don't take my son back there. So this is an example here where the interrogative hey is pointed with a segol. Alrighty, Genesis 24, 5. So to recap, the interrogative hey, which we see in our verse in Psalm 139, verse 21, is pointed in three ways. It's pointed with a hatif pathak, that's the usual form. It can be pointed with a pathak alone before a guttural, or a consonant that has a schwa or a sheva, or it can be pointed with a segol if the guttural is pointed with a comets. Okay, so that's how the interrogative hey works, the question in the Hebrew sentence. Bob, any questions before I move on regarding the interrogative hey? The
No, I
question
think that's good. I think that's good that we understand that that's letting us know that this is a question,
yes. You know, it's funny you should say that because when I
which
was
is an
first studying,
interrogative, is an interrogation. It's a
right,
questions being
correct,
asked.
correct. Yeah, you know, when I first began studying Hebrew, I would get thrown off because I would see the interrogative hey, and I thought it was the definite article, the.
Right.
But of course, in time, studying, in time, I realized and I was able to distinguish. Okay, so that's the recap. Now, keep in mind, folks, keep in mind that not every sentence in Hebrew begins with an interrogative hey, okay, because we have, just like in English, we have these question words. We have who, what, when, where, why, okay? So not every sentence begins with the interrogative hey, okay? So that's important. I wanted to point that out because I don't want you to think that every sentence has to have the hey. Alrighty. So now let's shift gears and let's talk about this concept of full spelling and defective spelling. This is our verse here. This is the first line of our verse in the Psalm 139:21, and it says, Halo me shanecha Yahweh esna. So that's how it reads. And again, here's the interrogative hey with the hatif pathak. Now, I want to focus on the lo here. And as I said, there are two ways that we find the word lo, which is no or not. Okay, the full spelling with the cholam wow or cholam vav, and without the wow or the vav. Uh, in the literature, you're going to find words like Malay spelling, Malay, which is the Hebrew term for full. In the literature, sometimes you'll come across the word plene, which is the Latin term meaning full. Okay, and so the spelling that does without the matris lectiones, because the holum wow, the wow here is part of the matris lectiones, and I'll talk about that in a moment. If it does not have the matris lecciones, and if it's the so-called defective spelling, that will be called chaser or defective. Okay, if it just has the dot, the holum. So, as just as a reminder, because I did speak about the matris lecciones way back early in Psalm 139, but as a review, the matris lecciones are these letters here that were used as vowels. And this goes way back. This is before the Masoretes. So we have the aleph, the hey, the waw or the vav, and the yod. And these letters were inserted into the text very, very early on to indicate long vowels, to distinguish the long vowels from short vowels. And I have a little chart that I'm going to show you so that you can see the difference. So that was the function of the matris lecciones, okay? And as I said, they were added long before the Masoretes. And proof of that is the Dead Sea Scrolls, because the Dead Sea Scrolls makes abundant use of the Matris Acciones. And we know that the Dead Sea Scrolls are before the Masoretes. The Masoretes come on the scene around the year 600 or so, right? So this goes way back in the development of the language. Now, here is a little chart where we see the long vowels and the short vowels. Okay, so in classical Hebrew, now in modern Hebrew, there's no distinction. There's no distinction between these vowels. But in classical Hebrew, there was. This will be aw, whereas this is ah. Okay, so this is the patak, the short a, and then we have a and e. And here is the long vowel. Here's the matris acciones, the E, the hirik, the long I sound, the E, whereas this is the E. And here's another matris acciones, the holum vowel, O. And here is the kametz katan, or the kametz hatuf. Now, this was another thing that would confuse me a lot as well, because it looks like the A. But as I said many, many times, the kametz hatuf, or the kametz katan, is in a closed, unaccented syllable. And when it's in a closed, unaccented syllable, it's a short O. It's an O sound. And here's the U, the shurik. Here's the matris lecciones. And there's the short U, the kibbutz. Right? So that's a distinction there between the long and short vowels. And as I said, the matris lecciones were added to make a distinction between the short and the long vowels. Right? So here's the deal. When the Masoretes come on the scene, of course, they see the matris acciones and they see the spelling here, but apparently they felt that this was not sufficient enough to indicate long vowel. So what they did is they then added the system of dots and dashes. And here we find the dot over the vowel as a work from the Masoretes, okay, to indicate, as I said, the long vowels that they supplement. Okay, so in a sense, the Masoretes are supplementing the matris lecciones by adding the dots and the dashes and so on. Now, I have here an example, and it's a good example because it has both the interrogative hey as well as the full and defective spelling all in one verse. And this is Genesis 4:7. And I have everything color coded here. The full would be in green, the defective, so-called defective, in yellow, and the interrogative hey is in the light blue. And this, of course, is from Genesis, when the Lord says to Cain, if you do well, will you not be accepted? And there's the interrogative hey. Okay, and if you do not do well, sin lies at the door. So here you'll notice that in this verse, here we have the full spelling in the very verse, And then we have the defective spelling in the same verse. I find that interesting. And I just find it interesting that they would have that variant spelling in one verse. Right? Okay, and we also see the same thing in our psalm. Verse 12 of Psalm 139 has the so-called defective, and our verse 21, has the full spelling. So even within our Psalm 139 that we're studying, we see the distinction. Bob, any quick questions before I go on to the third point?
No, go right ahead.
Alrighty. So now let's talk about the third thing that I wanted to share, which is this vertical bar called the pasuk. Okay, and the pasuk is found 3 times in our psalm. We find it in verse 16, 19, and 21. Alrighty, so it's basically a separator, and the Masoretes, as I said, they added. This comes later on in the development of the language. Of the text, and they added this later on. So in verse 16, the English would read, my unformed substance, the golmi, right? The golmi, the golem. Remember when we talked about the golem?
Yeah.
So golmi, and here's a kamet hatuf, right? A closed, unaccented syllable. This is the short O. Golmi, it's not galmi. Golmi, ra'u. So the Masoretes put the pasuk here to divide these two words because they should not be understood together. And the reason why they put it there is because of this accent here, the mapach. This is a conjunctive accent, and it should be understood together. But the rabbis say no, the Masoretes, I'm sorry, no, we should not understand these two words together, even though there's a mapach there, conjunctive accent. So they put this separated, they cut them off by putting the pasuk. Now, the pasuk is used in many ways, and I'm just going to focus on just 2 elements on how the pasuk is used, because it's used very differently. It has many functions. So I'm only going to focus on 2. Now, in verse 19, I think the pasuk plays a pretty important role, because here in verse 19, it would read Eloha, and here's, remember the mapik? There's the mapik to indicate that this is an actual consonant, not a vowel. There's the mapik inside the hay. Remember that the hay is a guttural, and gutturals cannot take a dagish, but this is not a dagish, this is a mapik. So Eloha Rasha. Now, if we were to read this in isolation, it would read Eloha, God is wicked, or wicked God. And again, here we find a different conjunctive accent, which is the merecha. Here's this little accent here, the merecha, which is a conjunctive accent. It should unite both words. But the Masoret said, no, even though these 2 words are to be understood together, let's divide them so that the phrase is not understood, God is wicked or wicked God. In verse 21, we see something very similar. Okay, here in verse 21, we have another conjunctive accent. We have the merecha, which should be united with esna, which would be Yahweh esna. They're to be read together due to the merecha, the conjunctive accent. And now, if we read this in isolation, it would be Yahweh I hate, or I hate Yahweh, which is blasphemous. It's irreverent. So again, the Masoretes put the pasuk there to separate the 2, okay, to avoid irreverence while you're reading the text. And the term pasuk is an Aramaic term, which means cutting off or a separator. Both definitions, I've seen both in the literature, cutting off or separator, something to separate. All right, so even though, once again, important, even though you have the conjunctive accent, which should be united, the pasuk separates. All right, so moving on. It's the same thing. I'm not going to repeat this. The conjunctive accent, the merecha, unites the words. So in our verse, in our psalm, I should say, in verse 19, im tiktol Eloha Rasha, right? Oh, that you would slay the wicked, O God. It's not, oh, that you would slay the wicked God. It is not to be understood that way. Let's see here. Yeah, okay, so the same thing. The same thing here, verse 19. So the Pasuk, as I said, is an attempt to prevent a profane thought, an irreverent thought, a blasphemous thought when you're reading. So to ensure that the reader does not misunderstand that Eloha is wicked, or that the poet is requesting that the wicked slay Eloha. Okay? So the context should make it clear, but yet nonetheless, the Masoretes felt that it was important to add the pasuk. And the same thing here with verse 21. Again, the English doesn't have a pasuk, of course, but we use commas, semicolons to separate a thought. Right? So in English, we do have that concept as well. So once again, in our verse, it is read, "Do I not hate them?" There's the interrogative hate. "Do I not hate them, O Lord, O Yahweh, who hate you?" It should not be read, "Do I not hate Yahweh, those hating you?" So again, that's the purpose of the pasuk. Alrighty, so as I said, the pasuk has various functions, many functions. I just focused on two little points there because this is a complex issue. It really is complex. Um, so what I focused on were the pasuks after the conjunctive accent, whether it's a mapach or a merecha or any other. It counteracts the union of the words, as we've seen in verse 19 and in verse 21. However, there are some pasuks that are part of the disjunctive accent, like the mapach legarme, and I'm not going to get into that. But as I said, there are different types of pasuks, and I'll just leave it simple for now. I want to expose you guys to this. My desire is that you would um, get the exposure and then do your homework, learn this, learn it well, and then go out and teach others so that we can get the nuances of the Hebrew text. That's really my desire. I want to expose you to this. All right? So again, I want to encourage you. Learn about the full and defective spelling, learn about the matriz lecciones, learn about the different categories of the pasuks, enrich your knowledge of the Hebrew language, teach and encourage others, okay, to do so. And I think that is what I have, Bob. And if you want to go to verse 22, there is verse 22.
Okay, I had one question with regards to the patach. It looks a lot like the seluk, is in that it's just like a line. I thought that
Uh,
was a seluk initially.
okay, the siluk. No, the siluk. It's not. Let me go to a verse where we can see the siluk. Let's go back here. Uh,
Because I know that at least sometimes the seluk is just
yeah.
a vertical line.
I'm trying to find. Okay, here's our verse. Here's our verse. And the two major disjunctive accents, as I said, is the athnak. There's the athnak. And here's the siluk here, Bob. Here is the pasuk. It's a big, much longer bar which separates the text, whereas the siluk is a little bar under
Okay.
the letter as an accent.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
these two go together, the siluk and the sof pasuk.
Okay.
Yeah,
The way that I had made the note for the seluk looked alike the pasach.
yeah.
So that was just my handwriting.
Yeah. Now keep in mind that there's another little vertical bar, and we see it here under the lamed. This is called a metheg. It's not a siluk because the siluk is it comes at the end of the verse with the sof pasuk with the two dots or two diamonds. So the siluk and the metheg look very similar, but they're two
Mhm.
different symbols. Okay, the metheg is wait. Let me get back to the cursor or the blesser. The metheg here is to open the syllable. It's an accent. It opens the syllable. This ends the verse, the siluk. So there is a big difference, as you can see here.
Yeah. Okay.
Good question. Anything else?
No,
No,
that's
no,
total.
no.
That's total.
By the way, no hard questions, okay? Because then I may not be able to answer them.
That's right. You're reading off cue cards. Anything off script can be a problem.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so yeah, that was a good one, Bob. That was a good one regarding the siluk, the metheg, and the pasuk. Yeah. All
Okay.
right. Let me go back. I have to scroll all the way back down to verse 22.
Okay. So how about to 21 again? I just want to
Okay.
make sure that we have time to do 22?
I don't know. I have my screen full here. I can't see the clock.
Okay.
I'm going to stop
It's
sharing.
8:21.
I'm going to stop.
8:21.
Oh, yeah, we have a half an hour.
8:21 means 9 minutes.
Oh, that's right.
Wanda, welcome, Wanda.
Yeah.
And Hadassah, thanks for your kind words.
Let me get back to the screen here so that I can
We'll
see.
get back to 21 for a second.
Yeah.
I think we'll have to wait for 22 next week then.
Okay. Let me go back to verse 21. Let's get the.
We might have covered this, or I might have said this while you were in and out because of our troubles. But I just wanted to re-emphasize a couple things here. That in that second portion of that, okay, the top line is not once hating you, yeah, I hate. Okay, so it's an awkward way of saying, do I not hate those who hate you? Again, rhetorical question. Not in no desire for an answer, because the answer is evident in the intention of the question. And the second part, do I not loathe those who rise up against you? And the idea of rising up against you, I think, is a very interesting thing, because that's that long word on that second line there, which is a composite word. U vit kom me mecha, which is to the ones who rise against you, based on the word tikva, like hatikva, the hope. So the idea of hope is a rising of expectations, things that we long for. So I think that's an interesting word to understand. It talks about rising up against you. There's a hope of the wicked to overthrow, just like the Tower of Babel, right? The confusion to build this huge building that was going to challenge the authority of Yah. So it's a rising up. Those who humble themselves before Yah, He will cause to rise. And we see that the times in the scriptures where Mashiach and then Kepha say Talitha or Tabitha. With the little girl, it was Tabitha Kumi. With the other one, it was Talitha Kumi, which is rise, Kumi, kum from the word kum. So, but this is to rise, to the ones who rise. I thought that was really interesting. To the ones who raise their hopes and their expectations, I abhor. And the word for that is kut, which is part of the larger word, which is et kotat.
Bob?
Yes.
Pardon me. I want to point that out for the folks, because these are long words. Here is the kum. Here's the kum, the kof, and actually it should be a shurek, but in this case, there's the kum here, and here is the kut here, kof, and we have the holomwal and the tate. So here it is here, folks. Okay.
Right.
Sorry to interrupt you, Bob.
No, that final word, which comes from the word kut, is to cut off, to detest, to be grieved, to loathe. And the idea of severing, making a severance, we are cut off. We see in the Torah, those who reject Yah are cut off. And what is the eighth day of creation is actually Yom Echad, the first day of the week, but yet it is the day beyond the Shabbat. Shabbat is given in the sense that we don't have a middle or an ending of that day. It doesn't drift off into becoming something else. So we have the 7,000 years and then comes the new heavens and the new earth. The 6,000 years of man upon the earth, the 7,000th year being the Shabbat rest, and what is beyond that? Well, the new heavens and the new earth, the new Jerusalem, and to cut off. We think of the circumcision of the flesh, right? Where the flesh is cut off, the limitations are removed, and it's a covenant sign as Yah made man in His image. When Adam gave had Seth, who was made in the image of Adam. So we are of our Father, and we are to be like Him. We are to bear His marks, so to speak. And again, the covenant is cut. It's not made. You don't make a covenant, you cut it off. So they rise up against you, and I abhor them. I cut them off. I cut off the detachments. We really can't be chummy and buddies with those who hate Yah. I mean, that's what these two verses are all about. And I've made that mistake in the past of trying to be pals and being kind and whatever, but not taking it to heart some of the things that they would be saying, and that I have no business being in this relationship. I'm being unequally yoked. I have good intentions, but he's more likely to rub off on me than me on him, because he's sealed. He sealed himself off. And sometimes we need to cut off relationships. We need to cut off habits, propensities, things that we think are okay, but we got to really evaluate and walk in truth and worship Him in truth and in spirit. And so we abhor, we detest these things that are worthy of a grievance that's being risen against Yah. And we because we have aligned with Him as the vassal king to the superior king, we've made that statement, and that officially true, that whoever is your friend is my friend, whoever is your enemy is my enemy. And again, tying in with Ruth, and throughout the scriptures, we have that idea that we have to be of the same mind. And with Ruth and her mother-in-law, right? She was determined not to be turned away, And Ruth is saying, "No, you go back home. Go back home." She says, "No, nothing but death is going to separate me from you," because there was kindness expressed over the years, where her husband died, who was Naomi's son, and yet she was more than a daughter-in-law. She was her lifeline to the line of David, to the line of Mashiach, and so on. So it's a beautiful, beautiful story. So we need to cut off the things that are wrong and hold on to things that are bad. That's what we're told to do, right? Prove all things, test all things. Hold on to the good and reject the evil. Detest the evil. That's why we hate the hate, right? We hate the hate. We hate the sin. So we hate. Um, so we should not get too cozy with things just because we're used to them or acquainted with them or find comfort in them. There's a lot of comfort food that's slowly killing you, destroying your colon and your inner being. So we use the word comfort sometimes still too freely. True comfort comes from achievement. You can't just wish your life that you want to be in a life of comfort. You comfort yourself in a job well done. At the end of the day, you come home, you're tired, and you feel good, though. It's a good time because you've had a complete day. You fulfilled your purpose. So as a result of that, you can comfort, you can rest. The seventh day, the day of rest and restoration, only comes after the work. You don't start a job by taking a vacation. You take a vacation after you've been proven, you've been tested, you've been accepted, and after a allotted period of time, then you can take a step back and rest in Him, rest in Yah. Like, for instance, when we read the Psalms, what do we have? We have Selah. The word Selah, again, it's a mysterious word for many, right? But it's also used in such a way musically, but also meditate on that. Take a step back. Don't rush through it. We don't do the Evelyn Wood speed reading course of the scriptures. We take our time. As we're doing here, we're taking 2 weeks to read one verse. But take your time. There's a time when we need to rush through things. We need to eat our Passover in the past with our ready to leave at any time. And as far as our comfort zone is concerned, we need to realize that our comfort's going to come from Him. not really of this world. We can have those days where we sit back and say we completed a certain task, but always be on the ready. Always be ready to give an account. And anyway, I'm going off a little bit here. It's 8:30. Any comments further on verse 21 or anything else you might want to contribute to that?
I just want to repeat, folks, that we are always giving a testimony before heaven and earth, and we must be mindful of that. Bad company corrupts.
Good
Bad
character.
company corrupts. And, we are called to be a light and salt in the world, so we have to interact, but there has to be that pasuk, right? That separator.
Good
Uh,
point.
there
Good
has to
point.
be a spiritual pasuk there to separate, to cut off, because if not, as you say, Bob, we can then start mimicking them as opposed to them mimicking us.
Amen.
So, and
But
we
again,
have to give. Excuse me.
no, I was going to say, but again, it depends on the opportunities that we have.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And we shouldn't
Right.
shirk our responsibility to reach the lost, but at the same
Right.
time, be mindful of the
Right.
compromise.
Correct. There has to be that balance. There's a balancing act, and I hope to share on that next week, because there is a balancing act that we are called to fulfill. Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah.
And as
So,
I did a teaching a while back with regards to the salt. There's different types of salt that was gathered from the Dead Sea. There was NaCl, sodium chloride, for flavoring food and for preservation. But there was
yes.
another salt which was used for different things. Like Messiah didn't say you're the salt of the planet Earth. He says you are the salt of the physical earth, of the soil. You are the salt of the soil. And that type of salt was used for fertilization. It was used also to cover the waste matter. That's why when Messiah is talking about salt of the land, he goes on to say that the salt is to cover it. It covers the waste and it neutralizes any possibility of putrefaction or diseases being spread. That this type of salt was there for preservation, not just preservation, but purification, for the helping of the seed to grow in the soil. So we are workers in the land. We are farmers. We are Am Haaretz, people of the land, which were often rejected by the hierarchy of religion because we're just a bunch of country bumpkins. But the potash, which is the salt that was made from the Dead Sea salts, there's a lot of different salts in this. That's just one salt. So the
Yes.
potash was actually used to benefit the plant. The NaCl, sodium chloride, is for eating the vegetables, but the potash was actually used for benefiting the plant in its growth, and also for covering, and also it talks about cast. It's good for nothing. What happens when the salt loses its flavor? He says, "What is that? How did salt lose its flavor?" Because these gannets who would sell the salt would mix it with sand, and they would mix it with sand, and you would buy it. Oh, it's great. You come home, you use it, and it's useless. It's like eating a sandwich at the beach, right? Sandwich, right? A lot of sand. Sandwiches there. So again, I never felt comfortable eating at a beach because it would always be grainy. You'd always get
Right.
sand thrown in there. So
Right.
again, it's like salt losing its flavor, salt using its purpose because it's mixed. It's mixed. It was good for nothing but tossing out the window to be trampled on the streets. That's what used to garbage. Used to trample it into the streets. But we are to be the salt of the land that benefits, that watches the tender plants grow, and that we are a benefit, and we are also to make things clean, and that they wouldn't be disease ridden, to help the good things grow and to prevent the bad things from growing. The weeds would be killed by this potash as well. So the benefit of being salty in this world, it's not just flavor or preservation. It's much deeper than that. In fact, we did a teaching on that a few weeks back. You could check out. So anyway, thank you for once again for being with us, and we're grateful to Yah that we've had a smooth sailing. We've had no issues to deal with, so I'm just grateful for that, and I'm grateful that Herman was not interrupted or censored. or prevented from speaking.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you. Yeah, we're coming to the end of our beautiful poem. It's been a beautiful, beautiful journey for me. Wonderful. We're coming to the end, so it's good. It's been an honor.
Oh man, always, always. And you see the details of this. A lot of people look at the Bible as just a book written, but there's so much detail, amazing detail.
I like the details. When
Yeah,
I
you know you do. That's what I'm saying. Herman is bringing out these details for us.
Yeah, Bob, when I see these little marks and these dashes, I go, "Oh, what is that?" And it's like it's over.
Yeah.
I start looking at it. Oh, what does that mean?
Amen. So I hope we're all getting a deeper appreciation of the Psalms, of the Hebrew writing. And it's going to be there also when we read in other portions of Scripture that are also taken in poetic form. It's there. So that's why we need to be familiar with some of the Hebrewisms, some of the Hebrew phrases. I think that's essential in our growth as believers, as Talmudim, as students, as the faithful disciples we need to be. So amen. Amen. So at this time, I would like to ask our sister Patricia to say a closing prayer for us. Okay, Pat? Patricia? Okay, she might have.
Yes, I had it on mute.
You had it on mute. Oh, no good. You shall not muzzle an ox when it plows the field.
Father Elohim, in the name of Yeshua, we thank you that we could come together this Wednesday night to open up the scriptures to learn more.
Yes, Lord.
Thank you for the many blessings you bestow upon us each day. Bless and protect each family here tonight and keep us safe. To Elohim be all glory and praise.
Praises.
In Yeshua's name.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Let me just check something here. Can I do that? Can I? No, we can't do that. Okay. All right.
Bob, let me just say a quick hello and good night to Hadassah. I see Hadassah and Wanda and William, of course. Have a good night. Thank you for joining us and for sharing.
Yes.
Amen. May the Almighty living Elohim keep us, each of us, under his protective shadow this week. Praise Yah for prayer warriors. Brother William, Brother Gilbert, Sister Pat, Mrs. Regina, and Sister Wanda. Amen. Amen. Toda rabah. Thank you. Hadassah, Wanda, and William, and anyone else out there. If you're not watching us live, you watch us at your leisure. We were all recorded, all these teachings, and you can catch up from last week to this week. And what we missed last week, we hopefully were able to contribute tonight and make some clarity on these things. And we're moving along. And we're grateful for you, for your good well wishes, and keep us in prayer and tell people about what we're doing here. We appreciate that. So toda rabah, we give you big thanks. Wanda, good night, folks. Thank you for sharing. Amen. Amen. It's real good, real good. So we say Laila Tov, which is good night, and Lahitraot, which is we will see you down the road a piece. Okay. So be well, be strong, be faithful, and keep moving. Keep moving. And we gain our comfort and the job well done. So we say, Shalom, shalom,
Shalom.
and be well. Laila Tov. Amen. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Shalom, shalom.